We're going to go ahead and call to order the Sacramento Transportation Authority. Will you please call the roll?
Directors Boulahan.
Here.
Desmond. Dickinson. Guerra.
Here.
Vice Chair Hume.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Maple.
Here.
Middleton.
Here.
Pulapati. Rodriguez.
Here.
Cerna. Singh Allen.
Just
Bees.
Present.
never.
Talamontes. Vang. And Chair Rathel.
Here.
And you do have a quorum with those members present.
If you'll please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you'll please make the announcements for today.
This meeting of the Sacramento Transportation Authority is live and recorded with closed captioning. It is cablecast on Metro Cable Channel 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast and DirecTV UVerse cable systems. It is also live streamed at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting replays Sunday, April 12th at 2 p.m. on Metro Cable Channel 14. Once posted, the recording of this meeting can be viewed on demand at youtube.com/Metro Cable 14. To make an in-person public comment, please complete a speaker request form and hand it to the clerk. The chairperson will call your name when it's your turn to make a comment. You may also send written comments by email to boardclerk@saccounty.gov. Your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record.
Thank you. And that takes us to the public comment. Do we have any items from the public on unagendized items?
No, we do not.
Okay. That takes us to the consent calendar. Do we have any comments from the public on the consent items?
No public comment.
All right.
I'll move consent. Second.
Please call the roll.
Okay. I have a motion by Maple, second by Rodriguez. Please vote. Sorry. The motion passes by unanimous vote.
Please call the next item.
Item 6 is receive a presentation on the countywide vehicle miles traveled program recommendations and direct staff to develop a countywide VMT program design, governance framework and funding, and create protocols for future board consideration.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, board members. I'm Kevin Busey. I'm joined by Sonia here and Matt from Fair and Pierce, thank you, to do a presentation. This is kind of a summary presentation of all the work that we did in 2025, as well as giving the board an idea of the outreach we did to stakeholders. So I'm going to start the presentation, and then we're going to hand it off to Fair and Pierce. So the agenda is going to be VMT mitigation, the background on VMT mitigation, VMT mitigation programs, the feasible types of programs, and then local program decisions. And kind of why we're here, I'm going to do this slide and then hand it off to Matt or Sonia. So we have a lot of projects in our expenditure plan, and they and some of those projects will have an impact on VMT. And that VMT adds a lot of cost to projects. It also takes a lot of time to figure out how to mitigate for those projects, which delays projects, and there isn't a really good system to mitigate projects currently. So we're seeing both high costs and delays in the delivery of some of our projects. And so we think that a cost-effective mitigation approach would make a lot of sense. There are different ways to handle that. And this whole endeavor is trying to figure out what might make sense for us to do. We think that a countywide approach could streamline the evaluation, the validation, prioritization of those VMT mitigation measures. And then we also believe that there's potential for this funding to be used as VMT for projects. So we're an agency, right? Our fundamental role as an agency is to provide funding for transportation, right? And so we think VMT mitigation is another source of revenue for mostly transit, active transportation, maybe infill housing, transit-oriented development, transportation demand management programs. And there are a variety of projects that are coming into Sacramento, not including projects just funded by Measure A, but also think of all the managed lanes projects that are planned as part of our capital area regional tolling authorities. We see this as a way to potentially provide a good option for agencies who are trying to do those projects to use a bank that SDA would manage, and then ensuring that those funds are then distributed appropriately to the local agencies. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to take over. Maybe hit the AB 13. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, my name is Matt Goyne. I'm a principal with Fair and Peers, and I'm here with my colleague Sonia to talk a little bit more about the details of what VMT mitigation programs are. So just a little quick refresher, since I don't know if all of you were at our past presentations, but vehicle miles traveled is one car traveling, one VMT is one car traveling 1 mile. It doesn't matter how many passengers you have or the type of vehicle. So 4 vehicles traveling 10 miles is 40 VMT. And so this is calculated at a project level or at a city scale in terms of evaluating the environmental impacts. And we calculate VMT because of SB 743, which was passed in 2013, which required the state of California to update its CEQA review process for projects to evaluate more appropriate measures that balance congestion management with statewide goals related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, promoting public health, and encouraging infill development. And when we have an excess of VMT, we have to, according to CEQA, we have to mitigate it. And there are a variety of strategies that are available. As Kevin mentioned, kind of the project level type mitigation programs are often quite difficult. And when we're thinking about the effectiveness of VMT mitigation, starting at the very top, on-site VMT mitigation measures for land use projects like TDM measures, for example, are generally going to be less effective because you're targeting each individual and their travel behaviors, while programmatic measures that affect people's broader travel behaviors are going to be more effective. And that's one of the key reasons why setting up a program would help you do those more kind of larger scale programs. So there are quite a few programs that are out there today, and really the types of programs that we have evaluated as part of this effort have focused on these two main types of programs, VMT banks and VMT exchanges. Local jurisdictions also have the option of updating their impact fee programs, but at a regional scale, we're focused on these two types of programs. VMT banks have a central bank operator who is converting a list of VMT reduction projects into credits that they can then sell to project applicants who create excess VMT. And so that bank operator is responsible for managing the bank, verifying that VMT is being reduced, and monitoring kind of the pool of projects that are out there. And they are paying implementation agencies, such as transit agencies, that then go out and build or fund those programs. An exchange, on the other hand, has a list of different projects that any individual project applicant can go and fund. They just select that project off the list. And then that money goes directly via the lead agency to the implementing agency to build. So kind of the difference is you have this kind of more flexible bank program that allows funding a bunch of different projects off a list that any project applicant can contribute to, versus an exchange, which includes just a select list of projects. Now, there is big changes that have happened over the past year. As you all are probably familiar with, AB 130 passed last June, included a statewide VMT mitigation bank that funds affordable housing. So the mechanism for this will be that the HCD's Transit-Oriented Development Implementation Fund, which currently funds affordable housing throughout the state, will be available to receive money from project applicants that create an impact, and then that money would then go to fund additional affordable housing that would then reduce the amount that the VMT per capita of communities by allowing people to live closer to locations where they can drive less. Technical guidance actually came out, draft technical guidance came out this week, and then the final guidance is anticipated to be this summer. This is intended to be an additional option for lead agencies, but not intended to supersede local programs. And so finally, where is everyone across the state? There's a bunch of similar types of programs that have been investigated. Contra Costa County and San Gabriel Valley County, for example, or Council of Governments are at a similar stage to where you all are, where you've evaluated the different options, looked into kind of moving forward, what options are there to move forward. And that would really be the next phase of actually setting up a program, whether it's a bank or an exchange. There are several in operation right now in San Bernardino County, for example. They have a bank that funds, have a draft program right now that funds commute reduction programs through an app, or you have WRCOG using an exchange where they have a list of projects that are ready to go for people to purchase. So there are some examples that we can follow through that have developed a lot of the implementation requirements. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sonia to talk about the local decisions y'all can make going forward.
Scooch this down with the height difference. Hi, my name is Sonia Anthoin. I'm a senior planner, also with Fair & Peers. And as Matt just said, I will be talking over really the meat of what we went over with Kevin for this project, in consideration of what Matt was just talking about with the statewide program, as well as some of our local considerations here. So, in terms of what engagement went into this process, we did engage with a working group which consisted of member city and county staff, Caltrans, SACOG, and TMAs. We previously had 2 working group meetings. We had a survey, 2 board meetings previously, and a meeting with the BIA. And then we had the working group review a draft of the report summarizing the VMT mitigation program choices and decisions. So key takeaways from that input. Generally, there was broad support for STA to lead the program, contingent on how implementation details like return to source mechanisms and project selection are addressed. There was also a desire for the program to include not just transportation projects, but also land use projects that produce VMT to enable scalability of the program. We also heard that key VMT mitigation project priorities were active transportation and transit, but there was still openness to infill housing and travel demand management. So again, to sum up the engagement, we heard direction to balance upfront investment, funding stability, and administrative complexity with maintaining local control and policy alignment. So ultimately, the STA staff recommendation is to do a VMT bank, and that best addresses stakeholder concerns about guidance, efficiency, flexibility, despite the concerns about the administrative complexity, cost, and uncertainty. Again, to revisit the challenges with banks, there is a higher upfront cost than other programs, and there is a higher administrative burden because of the complex structure of banks and the fact that VMT reducing project implementation would be through the bank administrator. But this is within the purview of STA's existing administrative and financial structures and aligns with STA's goal in managing countywide transportation funding, including Measure A and coordinating investments. Now, in terms of advantages, by creating a standardized countywide menu of mitigation investments and a centralized administrative structure, a VMT mitigation bank can reduce the need for project-specific mitigation design and administration, which can lower transaction costs for agencies and support more efficient delivery of projects that provide county-wide or community-scale VMT reductions. There's also flexibility here to fund both capital projects and ongoing programs, unlike with some of the other program examples. And there's transparency through clear credit pricing. Additionally, the purchase of credits by developing projects could feed back to a dedicated mitigation-driven revenue stream, as Kevin mentioned, that can be programmed into eligible transportation projects and programs. So these locally controlled funds can also be leveraged to match state and federal grants, further increasing total transportation funding available to the county. And a simpler slide here. I didn't have time to do the animation, but really this is trying to reframe 2 of the key trade-offs in any VMT mitigation program. So essentially we're trying to find the perfect balance between both the level of administrative burden and local control, as well as the most efficient and lowest cost VMT mitigations and the priorities of local agencies. So with those trade-offs in mind, some of the further work required before any VMT mitigation program can be established. would include these key considerations on governance and roles, so clarifying the roles of STA, local jurisdictions, transit operators, and other agencies, including how lead agencies may choose to participate and how STA's administrative responsibilities would be defined. The technical framework, which would establish methods for quantifying VMT reductions, defining eligible projects, demonstrating compliance with CEQA, and setting rules for generating, selling, and retiring credits in a transparent and defensible manner. On the financial and administrative structure side, it would determine how the bank would seed the first VMT reduction projects, how mitigation funds could be collected, managed, and programmed, how administrative costs could be covered, and how existing and future funding sources, such as Measure A and potential card or toll revenues and grants, might interact with a mitigation bank to both generate new revenue and reduce overall project delivery costs. And finally, legal and policy alignment. So confirming consistency with state law, including CEQA, Mitigation Fee Act, SB 743, and so on, and ensuring that the program structure remains grounded in STA's statutory purpose to fund and facilitate transportation improvements while maintaining local control and policy priorities. So I'll pass this back on to Kevin for the final slide.
All right. I want to do a short version of that entire presentation very quickly for you. Basically, we got agreement from staff that a BMT mitigation makes a lot of sense, but the devil's in the details. And so in order to figure out how we can sort of make everyone happy, there's really another phase of this, which is we need to really dig into the details of this and see if we can come up with a program that everyone's happy with from a local control, governance, roles, responsibility standpoint. So we're asking the board for direction to move forward with a VMT mitigation bank, do all this work. Would require amend our current contract with Fair and Peers to do that work for us, and then ultimately we come back with, okay, we've really dug into the details on the VMT mitigation program. We worked in addition with your stakeholders and got agreement on something I think is workable by everyone, and then we can make the decision on what we want to do. Because you're going to want to understand the cost and the pricing and all that. There are several, this is an option, right? No CEQA agency has to use this, so we have to be thoughtful about that. There is a statewide option under AB 130 that's coming on board. Potentially there is a SACOG option that's coming on board as well. And so, hopefully when we return, you're going to have a better information on both. What's the statewide option? What's the SACOG option? What's the STA option? And if any of those work well together or can complement each other. But I think right now we're just asking for direction to move forward with kind of get into the details. So with that, we are open to any questions.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Director Guerra?
Thank you very much, Chair. So a couple of considerations. One, in the absence of the legislature changing anything in the VMT laws, I think some of the concerns that I have, particularly when you look at the surrounding areas, is how a bank will work when the county is not an island. I was just on the phone earlier today with some of my close friends who work downtown, but they all live in West Sacramento. In fact, they've chosen to live in West Sacramento because the commute is easier in that direction. Coming from Yolo County, many folks are moving into the east end of Woodland to come to Sacramento as well. And if you're in Folsom, thinking about my friends that were at Intel, they moved to El Dorado Hills. So this idea of a VMT bank with just a county option, I worry that it has a lot of missing pieces as well. So, and in fact, the number of legislative workers now that live in Sutter County that are commuting down the 99 is another example. So as we look at development, as we look at how it affects our county, I want to identify those gaps. So whatever the study does, to me, I want to identify those gaps. And then there's the economy of scale issue. So does it make sense for this organization does it have that scalability, or should it have that scalability to address that dynamic of a metropolitan region that we do have here adjacent to Sacramento? So I'll stop there, and I said those are my concerns about where we move forward. I would say I'm not comfortable using the state VMT bank, and in the sense that I worry about how things change, and next thing you know, any credits that we would have or would be eligible might end up in the Bay Area or Los Angeles. So I think that worries me quite a fair bit. So I'd rather have something as local as we can, but knowing that we don't live in an island. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Mabel.
All right, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. This has been the VMT mitigation, week or so for some of us who also serve on SACOG or on the Lunar Committee anyway. So we recently got a pretty in-depth presentation from them as well. So it's been really interesting learning about this topic, the bill, and how it may impact locally, and what are the various ways that we could go about it. I do have a few questions. One of the ones is actually about the cost. So in the staff report, it says that it can range between $100,000 to $800,000 to possibly set this up for STA if that's something that we wanted to do. Do we have a sense of where we might fall on this? And does that include the amount to amend the contract if we decided to move forward to do the assessment or the research?
Yeah, the current proposal we received from Fair and Peers last week was for $350,000, and that included, and we've included some dollar amount in our budget that we're currently working on.
Okay, so about $350 to do the research about whether or not we would want to move forward, and then there would be an additional cost presumably to actually set up the program. But we don't know what that would be yet.
Well, there's this is still like kind of planning level costs, and then there's there's ongoing costs related to administering the program, which this work will help us identify what are the kind of the ongoing cost burden associated with doing that.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. So essentially, if we move forward today, $350 to start, and then we'll find out more about the ongoing cost of the program. That's really helpful. And then another thing that I heard mentioned, I know in the strategy that SACOG is considering pursuing, it does include infill housing. I heard infill housing as a possibility. I know it's included in the legislation. I heard but my question is if STA pursued a model, maybe this is a better question for you too, is that something that STA could do, is to focus on infill housing, given that it's a transportation-focused agency? Or would we have to do some kind of amendments to what we do as an agency in order to do that?
Maybe I'll take a first pass at how others are approaching this. And typically that becomes funding housing becomes a partnership with your local housing authority, whoever is doing kind of countywide affordable housing construction locally. So San Mateo, for example, which we worked through this process with, they have typical agreements that they work with other agencies in getting those kind of funding arrangements, and they have a whole process of taking money, ensuring that it gets built, kind of following the whole life cycle of the process. And so that's where the transportation authority in that case would partner with the housing authority, and that's happening in Southern California as well as they set it up. I don't know if it's the same as any other implementation agency, because STA doesn't would partner with your local transit agencies, for example, to implement any of the transit projects as well, or local agencies to implement the bike and ped projects.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's possible with partnership.
It's a pretty typical arrangement, yeah.
Okay, and then the last question I have, and then I'll just have a couple comments, is around, so if we're able to do this through STA, will we be able to be competitive with the state bank on cost efficiency? So one of the things that I read is that the state bank guidance came out and that the price is about 17 cents for VNT. Is that something that we would be able to compete with locally, or I'm just curious how we would be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits of a local program is understanding the local context better and kind of being able to identify, what are the areas in each community that would provide the greatest level of benefit. The way that they did their calculations, it's based on a location efficient area, which is great. When you're looking across the state, you're trying to normalize kind of what are the kind of places where people would reduce their trip lengths throughout the state in a similar context. But Sacramento County could drill into that further and identify if there's more cost savings from specific areas, or whether it's that balance that Sonia was presenting about of local control. Maybe not every community provides the same level of VMT benefit, but some are going to provide greater cost benefit, and that's ultimately the decision the county will have to make.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. I want to say that I align myself with Director Guerra on the concept of not really supporting the idea of us participating in a state bank, because I'm also weary of the idea that we would put money, or these organizations that are local would put money into this bank and it could be spent wherever, Bay Area, Los Angeles, so on and so forth. And I think that puts us at risk of not seeing local benefits to the resources. But I also want to agree that I think that there is benefit to acting more regionally. I also feel that at times we don't get our fair share here in Sacramento. I think that that's been said pretty vocally, but I also think that in order to utilize an economy of scale and to really see the benefits of some of these projects, a regional approach probably is the right one. And so I personally am leaning towards, and also I'm a little bit concerned about the cost, to be frank. So $350,000 for additional to do research into what this can look like when we already have research that's happening at another agency. That would be a more regional approach, of course, not specific to us, but they're able to do that at the staff level, is just a little concerning for me. So I don't know if I would support moving forward on an additional contract, and I would like to see us partner with SACOG to see what we can do in a more coordinated fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hume.
Are there requests to speak on this item? If so, I would wait till after public comment.
There are no public comment.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks for moving us forward.
Oh, you're welcome. Appreciate the comments that have been made so far, and I appreciate the report from Affairs of Peers. And it's an interesting concept is the intersection of housing, transportation, right, and congestion, and I think we're starting to see a blending of those lines that is becoming clearer and clearer. I just received a briefing yesterday because we're looking at updating our affordable housing impact fee. And they separated it geographically, and this is just in Sacramento County, north of 80, between 80 and 50, and then south of 50 in the unincorporated areas of the county. And whether or not we should increase our affordable housing fee in order to fund more affordable housing, whether or not we should go to an inclusionary type ordinance that would require the development of affordable housing, capital A affordable housing, or eliminate the fee altogether. And in every geographical area and in every scenario of what affordable housing would be targeted, whether the fee was erased or increased, market rate multifamily projects were deemed infeasible because of the cost to produce the units. It does not pencil even at the insane rates that are being charged for rent right now. And I say that just as a cautionary tale because the one thing about VMT is the project can avoid the impact if they redesign it, if they do certain things to come into compliance with how it's calculated. But to the point about the statewide bank, that's a non-starter for me. The idea that a greenfield project in Antelope would pay for a bus stop in Santa Monica is absolutely ridiculous. Because within the mitigation fee world, we used to go by this thing called a nexus, where there had to be a connection between the impact being created, the mitigation being paid, and the project that actually absolves some of that mitigation. And so I appreciate the desire to be regional, and my colleague and I actually had a discussion about this at the Lunar meeting, because I can understand how certain communities won't have that economy of scale and won't be able to provide some of these projects that offset the VMTs and the need and desire to hop in a single-person vehicle. However, I think this is all a part of a larger conversation that we've been having about Sacramento County's fair share. And by that I mean Sacramento County, the geographical area, not the jurisdictional entity. And so I would be curious how this conversation and whether or not, speaking of economies of scale, whether or not VMT bank administration could be folded into the larger conversation we've been having about morphing into an RTPA and or a transportation commission. Just because I think there's a lot of administration that would happen at that. And then the last thing I'll say is a question, is if we were to have an STA administered VMT mitigation program, would STA be involved in the calculation of either the impacts and or the mitigation projects, or would those numbers be determined by somebody else and we would simply be convening dollars to constructions?
So it's the lead agency's responsibility to go through and evaluate the effects of the specific project. So do the calculations. It would be STA's responsibility as the bank to verify those, make sure that they are reasonable, make sure that they can be monitored, and that would be part of those administrative responsibilities. But this type of program does not take any of that responsibility away from local lead agencies to do a clear, complete CEQA evaluation.
Okay, so it would still be whoever is processing the entitlements as a part of their CEQA review.
Exactly.
They would determine the amount of impact needing to be mitigated.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could see that this is just being inserted at the final stage of that mitigation process, obviously being a collaborator through it.
Okay. Well, generally I would not be in favor of this program except for the fact that it is coming forward either at the statewide level or at a more regional or local level. And so I think it's worth exploring because we're kind of at the tip of the spear of it right now. And so I would like to have a better idea of the full landscape of STA's role and what this would look like if we administered it as an STA only, if we threw in with SACOG, if we made it as part of the larger sort of how do we control more of our local transportation dollars here. And then the other piece of that is, can STA lean in the affordable housing space and how we would coordinate with our housing authority in order to deliver projects that make sense and that put this mitigation money to work. So. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've just got a few questions for Fair and Peers. First off, really about affordable housing. I can think of some affordable housing projects, at least in our jurisdiction, that would be VMT inducing, right? Some that are out in greenfield areas, right? And so I guess I'm curious, are we really talking about infill housing being part of this program, or is there something I'm missing that makes affordable housing somehow VMT negative, whereas market rate housing makes it VMT positive?
Yeah, I mean the way the state and other agencies are defining it is through infill affordable housing, combining those two pieces to make sure that you're not locating affordable housing residents kind of at the edge where there aren't amenities, services, et cetera, that they couldn't access without a car. So I think putting those two pieces together is typically critical. That would be part of what STA would define is what the parameters are.
Because theoretically, you could have an infill project that was market rate, that was also a VMT. It was mitigating VMT, right?
Yeah, and the characteristics, and so per that point, if you are looking directly apples to apples of market rate versus affordable, the research does show that affordable housing residents generate less VMT because they are just lower income and therefore have less discretionary spending to spend on doing trips, et cetera.
Understood. Thank you. I did notice at the end of the report, it was, I don't know if I'd call it a disclaimer, but it was, ATP actually could be VMT inducing, right? It seemed a little confusing to me that it's like, well, everything we're doing, when we free up capacity on our roadways, more people fill in that capacity, right? It's kind of the idea of adding lanes that we used to do, that we are improving our level of service, and then we figured out sometimes it backfires on us, right? And I couldn't help but read that disclaimer and go, where does this end, right? Obviously, everything we do to reduce VMT frees up capacity on our roadways, which then makes it easier for people to drive. And so is there some sort of, I guess the question is there some sort of risk that we have these banked projects that are there that are generating these credits, and then 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road, we figure out that we were really just spinning our wheels, and then I'm just trying to think of how we've now paid for the project, but we don't realize the benefits. So we can't sell them.
You got a keen eye there on some of the near-term effects. Now, the long-term effects is where does your growth occur in your region, and how much affordable housing are you placing when you're talking about building affordable housing, for example? How much of that are you placing in infill, kind of walkable, convenient locations close to jobs? And so the cumulative effect of doing more development in infill locations is one of the most powerful things you can do to reduce your long-term VMT that you do create on your regional network. It is true that when you take people out of cars on your highway network, they're likely to get backfilled by other folks as the congestion gets a little bit less severe and people can feel comfortable driving farther. But the thing about infill affordable housing is that you are concentrating people in those lower places where people just have to drive less to get to other locations.
But can you comment a little bit? Is there like a financial, if we were to operate a bank, is there a financial risk that we perform the project because we think it's going to have this benefit and we figure out later it doesn't have that benefit? Is there a risk to the organization for operating that bank? And do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, that's fascinating. But
or do we say, hey, we've stamped it. Here's the VMT mitigation. We're not going to look at it again.
Yeah, one of the responsibilities is to monitor the effects of that project and kind of adapt make sure as an operator that you're getting the money out of what you're funding. And so, monitoring through kind of trip counts or looking at using big data, other sources to make sure that it is in fact generating less VMT, that project, as anticipated, that would be one of the responsibilities.
Thank you. And then I think my last question, when you showed your slide of different agencies, it seemed to me like your transportation authorities were opting for the exchange. And I read through the report and looked at it didn't seem like there was a clear reason for that. I understand exchanges are less administrative overhead. Is there some other reason why your transportation authorities are going the exchange route versus the bank route?
There's a mix. Like San Bernardino County Transportation Authority did opt for the bank, and they're kind of the farthest along. They have, they identified one item to fund right now, which is this kind of like app-based commuter reduction program, and they are going to roll that out and see how effective it is. And then after monitoring effectiveness, they're going to try other measures. I think what really comes down to is what fits within an agency's administrative the purpose and what they can do today. And so some agencies just have less staff capacity. They are doing less on the kind of regional coordination side. You can certainly comment on this, but the type of function that a bank has of bringing money in and distributing it out to fund projects is certainly within kind of the authority of the Sacramento Transportation Authority. Versus some other agencies that just have very little capacity to do more of this kind of thing. And so they've opted for a more kind of distributed exchange model.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, that's all my questions. I'll just make a few comments. I definitely support the local control aspect of this. I share my colleagues' concerns about the state bank. And I do think having both land use and transportation projects makes sense. For long-term flexibility. And then the only other thing I saw in here, which was, I think, of note and worth discussing, is just that equity consideration that's there. I think we have to be cognizant that if we end up with multiple different levels of mitigation banks that an applicant could use, our bank needs to stay competitive. And so I just want to make sure that as we're looking at equity considerations, the primary, to me, the more important things are your return to source and also your performance. And so we stay competitive. Those are all my thoughts. Director Guerra.
Yeah, so maybe can someone inform me of this, but I just heard that SACOG is doing this analysis too. I don't sit on the board, and I was an alternate, but so I paid a little more attention there. But because I guess my question, if they're doing this work, then why would we approve another $350,000 for duplicative work? And if not, then could we not have SACOG look at this question about ask this question? I mean, I'd as as a member agency of SACOG, I would ask SACOG, hey, can you look at what it's like for a county to do it? Maybe Yolo County wants to do the same thing. So is that happening, or?
Yeah, so I mean, there's sort of an interesting, this thing has developed very interestingly, right? So SDA started its efforts. It brought in SACOG, made SACOG part of our selection committee for Fair and Peers, a part of the working group. And then about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months into it, all of a sudden SACOG wanted to do their own mitigation bank, specifically to fund Green Means Go, right? That's their specific target. They really want to focus, fund Green Means Go. And so the challenge for STA, I think, is, and this really gets down to, this discussion about regional versus countywide, but, and also what is your policy intent behind these funds? So if the STA board wants to fund VMT mitigation that goes to infill development and infill development infrastructure only, then that's what SACOG is working on. I cannot tell you how cost competitive that is. But if that's what the SDA board wants to do, then that sort of makes sense to do it through SACOG. But you're going to still have those similar concerns regarding return to source that I think are going to continue to come up. And so I would also say that if you decide now that you don't want to move forward with this work, then whatever those return to source guidelines are developed are going to be wholly upon the SACOG to develop. And
Let me ask you this, Director Busey. If SACOG continues with their study and then we don't get the information that we're looking for, wouldn't we then that would be a time when we would say, look, we need to do our own work. But as a member agencies that we're already paying dues into, wouldn't we just direct or ask SACOG to? I'm not a board member, but that's, I guess that's my concern. Like the STA budget that we do have, administrative budget, is pretty finite. So, there's a thing between $50,000 contracts. I get those. We do those every now and then. But now we're talking about $350,000 contract. We just had a discussion to stop an outreach contract. I think it was about $120,000. So this is for to talk about educating our public about our potholes and the major issue we have on our roadway. So I guess that's my concern is why move on to this contract if we can actually partner with another agency?
I think, I to be perfectly honest, I was not ready to discuss what are the pros and cons of a countywide versus SACOG, approach here on the.
I guess the question is to the point here. Is it if there is another entity doing that work, should we replicate or duplicate that work and spend $350,000? Not whether it's a countywide or not.
I think generally we're not there enough to figure out what we think makes the most sense for STA versus what makes the most sense for SACOG, and then compare those. We're not quite there yet. At some point, it would be good to actually do that. I think we're not quite there, but I'd like to get there to figure out what our costs would be versus their costs, and what are their actual methodologies as far as tracking this and or identifying the VMT mitigation. I don't think we're there yet. So. That's generally, I think, where we're at. I think STA, just from my standpoint, there's a lot of positives to STA doing it. Part of that is we have existing programs that fund transit, active transportation, and so we're able to just roll money right into those programs as far as VMT mitigation. But I don't know where the things are going. But I would caution you to rely solely on SACOG and not put yourself in a position where there's you don't have a way to negotiate with SACOG at all because you've decided to stop doing all work on your program as far as the return to source component of it. And that's assuming you, again, just want to fund infill development. But that's the policy direction. I'm happy to hear it from you guys.
Director Kennedy.
Yeah, thank you, Director Guerra, for bringing that up, because I think that is a good point as far as utilizing the resources that we have available to us. First of all, I'd like to know if there's anybody in the audience that's from SACOG that would be willing to step up and address that issue. Appreciate Director Busey stepping up as quickly as he did. So I'd like to hear from SACOG. I also kind of have a problem with pitting SACOG against STA. I don't think anybody at the board was doing that. And being that I think 8 of the agencies that sit on the SACOG board are Sacramento County agencies, I don't see why we couldn't work with SACOG to call out that information that is specific to Sacramento County. But I'd like, if there's somebody at SACOG that would like to step forward, I'd like to ask for that.
Dov, you want to come on down?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for inviting me down. Yeah, so we started this process of looking at a VMT mitigation bank a little over a year ago, and it actually, for a lot of the reasons that you all are describing, with a lot of concern with the statewide bank and kind of what would happen if folks were paying into that and potentially seeing money leave the region. So that was really when we started that process, and then we're also kind of focusing this effort as a Green Means Go effort. We're not, as of right now, we've made no decision as to what the money would be spent on. I think what we've been clear with our board and our Land Use and Natural Resources Committee on is that I think it would be probably a emphasis on housing, given kind of the Green Means Go orientation of that. We've also done some preliminary work on, the cost efficiencies, and really have seen that the housing projects actually can be some of the most cost-effective projects and kind of can keep that price low by kind of focusing on the housing piece. But I think we're also open to kind of looking at some of the other transportation components as well.
Thank you.
And just to be very clear, we'd love to continue to work with Director Busey to determine if there's a way forward to kind of collaborate and complement your program.
Thank you, Dov. Director Hume?
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate the comments going on, and I don't think anybody is purposely pitting one agency against another agency. But if we want an independent analysis of what it would look like for a Sacramento County controlled, Sacramento County benefiting program, I think it would be important for a Sacramento County agency to investigate that answer. SACOG, having just, it is VMT all the time, it seems, this week, having just sat through the lunar meeting where we did receive a report on that, I guess the ultimate question is, how local do you want to be versus how regional, or what kind of return to source do you want to have? Because if you want it to stay in Sacramento County, then I think we have to know from our own work, and by our I mean yours, but from our own consultants' determination of what that would look like, and whether or not there's an economy to scale, whether or not the program would be competitive, because ultimately that is going to be a deciding factor. Is if it's cheaper to go with the statewide bank than with a SACOG program or with an SDA program, or to actually change your project, I think at the end of the day, the market is going to determine certain outcomes. So I think we're just exploring whether or not it makes sense, and I think it's important for us to answer that question.
Are there other regions that we could look to that have overlapping banks? I know this is early in the process for a lot of areas, but are there other areas that are looking at it and not just regional versus state?
Caltrans District 4, which oversees the Bay Area, MTC's region, is starting a bank investigation at this moment. Yeah. But they've only just started it, and there are countywide kind of exchanges set up in San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Sonoma counties already. So there's none set up currently. It's all COGS or TAs that have set up so far.
Yeah, and just I'm looking long term, right? If both agencies are going through this process, is there a case potentially that both of those in operation long term makes sense for our region? Or is it something where if one of them is providing that service, there's really no room for the other one?
It's typically they'll provide different options for different situations is typically and that's what the conversations in the Bay Area have been about so far, is that the TAs oversee their local projects. They're very much connected to the ground, but for large freeway express lane projects like that, cross county lines especially, which there are several going on, that's where Caltrans and MTC see that they have a role in. But they don't want to be involved in local land use kind of impacts, and that's where the TAs are much more. They're not doing local land use entitlement review, but they are providing that service for their county member agencies. So I think that's kind of the layering that you're seeing. Sacramento perhaps is a little bit different than that one, or SCAG, I think, has no interest because all of their COGs and CTAs have already dove into it already, and they're just too big.
Thank you. Director Guerra?
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate Director Hume's a point of having independent information and for our county, but also being just prudent with the budget. It seems to me that I would prefer to ask our director to ask SACOG and ask board members to ask SACOG to get that information. If we, in fact, have questions about SACOG's analysis, or we don't trust that analysis for whatever reason, then nothing precludes us from coming back and actually spending that money to do that analysis. So, what do they say? Measure twice, but cut once. So I would rather, before moving an item here today, I would just say, hey, and maybe let me ask this of the SACOG staff. If they could come up here and I don't know, you probably cannot get a definitive answer today, but some of the concerns that have been raised here about competitiveness, two banks operating at the same time, whether they're conflicting, in fact, I'm assuming that in the city of Sacramento, I don't want to make any assumptions, we'd be interested in doing Green Means Go projects while SACOG is doing Green Means Go projects. Is that going to be a conflict? Would that affect us here? So I think those questions, are those things you can get back answers to this agency?
Absolutely, yeah. We have direction from our Land Use and Natural Resources Committee and the board to sort of continue to coordinate with STA on how we can collaborate and how we can have programs that complement each other. So we'd love to continue the conversation, and whatever you're looking at wanting analysis for, we'd be happy to work with you on.
Okay. Well, thank you. So, Mr. Chair, I guess I would just say that if we should get that information at no cost to STA, and if we're unsatisfied from that, then I would ask that we re-agendize this and then vote for the appropriate contract to get the analysis that we do want. And frankly, it might give us more information to narrow the contract so that the contract is much more specific to what we want to know. So that's just my suggestion.
Happy to entertain a motion whenever somebody would like to clarify this discussion. Mm-hmm.
This is receive a presentation. It's an action
No,
item?
it's an action
It's an
item.
action item. Look, I will make a motion that to direct the executive director to work with SACOG and ask to receive the information of what was identified today on competitiveness, independence, conflicts with the programs, how a county bank would work. I'm sure other counties would appreciate that information as well. And report back to us. And also, if after that presentation that comes here, we can revisit the question of whether we move forward a contract.
I'll second.
Any further discussion before we call the roll? All right, please call the roll.
Okay, motion by Guerra, second by Maple. Please vote. And the motion fails with Directors Rathel and Hume voting no.
Fails?
Motion passes.
Oh,
No, you only have
you only have 9?
7 votes.
Yeah.
You need 9.
So we need all of us here today to be unanimous in order to pass.
That is
from
correct.
And there's no way to get to another vote here, so. I mean,
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I would ask the chair and Director Hume to at least consider what we're trying to achieve here. It doesn't mean we're not come back here, but at least, let's get some free information here. And not that it's free, because we're already paying our dues to SACOG, by the way. So let's get our money's worth before we come back. So I'll just ask that.
My vote is my vote. I think there's a time value to money, and while I appreciate the work that SACOG is doing, we would be losing substantial time and I think losing ground on the effectiveness of the program. So, no.
Can we talk a little bit about the contract value? Is it $350 fixed rate? Could complete the whole analysis and come back to us in a year, or is this start your study and come back and report, and we'll check in every $50,000 to $100,000?
Yeah, I think this conversation in general has been really helpful in the scoping process. What we had sent Kevin is initial 7 pages of here's what we could do and here's the price associated with that. But this is already getting my brain going on. I think there's a phase 1 piece of this that we could do that's more in the 150 range, and then come and revisit and just segment it out that way. And also help provide some information nexus back and forth with SACOG too. What do you think, Kevin?
I wish I could make a motion here, but I can't. But if I could, I mean, the direction I think I would, I'm trying to find a middle ground here, but why don't we work with SACOG, figure out what information they can come up with and provide to us, and then what information they are not going to provide or not working on and that we may have an interest in, and then we'll come back and say, here's what SACOG provided. We're going to, and we'll propose a amendment to sort of get to some of these questions that we're getting to today with what they haven't been able to do. We'll still probably want to validate whatever we get from SACOG, but I think there's some usable information in there. So we can ask them to provide what they have done and kind of go from there and adjust the proposed scope and fee. So that would be my recommendation. We'll come back with a revised and a more streamlined scope and fee that leverages whatever SACOG does, so we're not paying double or paying for that work twice.
So I would make that motion to coordinate with SACOG but not cede the full analysis of the program, and come back with more information and a little more defined scope.
I'll second that.
Any discussion before we call the roll?
Nope.
Please call the roll.
And that motion passes.
Please call the next item.
Item number 7 is receive a presentation on the Stockton Boulevard Safety and Transit Enhancement Project.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So we're going to have a presentation today on the Stockton Boulevard Safety and Transit Enhancement Project. It was called the Stockton Boulevard BRT and Multimodal Partnership. The presentation is going to be done by Jesse Gothen from the city of Sacramento, along with his support from, I believe, Greg Kyle. We do have representation from the city of Sacramento, County of Sacramento, and SACRT here, so they'll be available for questions. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jesse.
Thank you, Director Busey. Very happy to be here today to present to the STA board the progress that we have made on the Stockton Boulevard Safety and Transit Enhancement Project, or we like to call the Stockton STEP. This is the result of a partnership that was formed with SACRT staff, and I'm joined here today by Anthony Adams. Sorry, Greg. And also, Joe Grasick from the county. And we formed this partnership originally to kick off this project and pursue grant funds from SACOG. SACOG gave us an award in 2024. In 2025, we established the partnership with a formal MOU and kicked off the project with a request for proposals. We had a very competitive selection process and ended up hiring Kimley Horn, who is with me here today, Mr. Greg Kyle. And they have a lot of experience in high-quality transit in Seattle and Los Angeles area. So over the course of this year, we've done a lot of data collection, a lot of evaluation of existing conditions, traffic counts, interviewing bus drivers, field walks, meeting with stakeholders all along the corridor. And we're finally ready to start presenting solutions and really setting up that vision for the future as Stockton grows with all the projected land use in both the city and the county. And how are people going to continue to move? And how should we prioritize the different modes? So I'm going to ask Greg Kyle to come up and kind of lead us through this presentation and talk about the specifics.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Jesse. And I'll skip this first slide since Jesse already provided the overview of the partnership that has come together for this project and jump into some of our information. Beginning with the project area map, this project has got two primary components, a bus rapid transit component that's looking to connect on the south end, the Florin Town Center, to downtown Sacramento and the Sac Valley Station in downtown. But the project also has a complete streets focus beyond the BRT focus, and that limits for the complete streets focus are along Stockton from Florin to Alhambra. At the outset of the work that we began last year, we built upon work that had been done in prior efforts to establish a vision for the corridor, really a vision to help lead to the improvements that will be developed. And first and foremost, part of the vision is enhancing safety for all users, in particular vulnerable roadway users, cyclists and pedestrians, where there's a history of a lot of collisions along the corridor. Also, a focus on multimodal, looking to transform Stockton Boulevard, which has been solely focused, I could say, on moving vehicles to accommodating all modes of transportation. Part of that would be advancing premium transit to serve the core riders that are already using the system better, as well as attracting additional riders to the bus route along the corridor. We want to have a focus on sustainability. I think it works hand in hand with the active transportation and the transit use, making sure that there's a comfortable environment out there for folks that are walking, biking, and waiting for the bus. And a focus on community inclusiveness and equity throughout the corridor is another one of the overarching goals of the project. So with the bus rapid transit component of the project, a quick definition of a BRT system, it's a high-quality bus system, and it could provide all or some of the components that are listed here, including dedicated bus times to speed up the service of the bus in the corridor, as well as provide a more consistent travel time so that the bus is keeping its schedule. Looking at transit signal priority for buses. Transit signal priority is a mechanism where if a bus is approaching a traffic light, the light will be held at green until the bus has a chance to proceed through the intersection to speed up the bus route. Looking at improving the stations, providing a more comfortable environment for folks that are using the system, as well as opportunities to speed up the boarding process to help speed up the bus. And really, another key component of bus rapid transit is branding the system. It's something different than bus service. Sometimes you hear it referred to as light rail on rubber tires. For the BRT system right now, we're focused on, as part of our alternatives analysis phase, evaluating what is the best route for the BRT service. Is it to follow the alignment of the existing Route 51 with maybe some small adjustments on either end of the route to help speed up time and tie into the Sac Valley Station? There's some advantages with this route. It is the highest ridership route today in the Sac RT system. There's high ridership along the Broadway component of the corridor. And so that's some of the benefits, as well as the fact that there's already frequent service along this route. And so it wouldn't result in a large increase in operating costs to continue to, or to evolve the system from the Route 51 into a BRT service. The second option that we're looking at, we call it the hybrid alternative because it's a hybrid of Route 51 and Route 38. It follows the Route 51 south of the Stockton Broadway intersection and the Route 38's alignment to the north of the Stockton Broadway intersection. Some of the advantages of this alignment is that it does serve the high-density area of UC Davis Health and the additional development that's coming in that area with Aggie Square. Provides some connections within the Midtown area also, which is another advantage. One of the disadvantages of this alternative is that it would require additional operating funds because if the BRT follows this alignment, there still does need to be service maintained, and particularly along Broadway. that would no longer be part of the BRT route where we do have a lot of ridership today. And so there would need to be improvements to the non-BRT service to complement the BRT service that would result in additional operating costs. Going to pivot now to the second component of this project, which are the complete streets improvements. Quick definition of complete streets: it's a road that's designed to accommodate all users, not just vehicles, with the goal of providing a safe and comfortable environment for all the users. Could include better bike facilities, wider sidewalks, improved pedestrian crossings, as well as the transit components that we talked about. And what is shown on the right side is a travel mode hierarchy, something that can be applied to a complete streets project to prioritize the modes for improvements. And what starts at the top of the hierarchy is the most vulnerable users, the walkers and rollers along the corridor, and kind of proceed down where the vehicle travel, which in the past has been prioritized above all of the other modes, actually has the lowest standing on this hierarchy. And to understand some of the evaluations that are going on, I'm going to present one sample corridor segment focusing on Stockton Boulevard between Elder Creek Road and 20th Avenue. And start off with some photos of what we have out there today. On the left, you see a photo which kind of illustrates narrow sidewalks, frequently obstructions within the sidewalks, such as utility poles. Not an inviting environment for pedestrians. The picture on the top right shows that behind the sidewalks, there's often things that need to be taken into consideration if we want to widen and have improvements behind the sidewalk, such as street trees, utility poles, and other things. And so there's a balancing act if we want to widen the corridor in order to be able to provide additional improvements. And then the picture on the bottom right, just another illustration of some of the challenges that pedestrians and cyclists have along the corridor: frequently spaced driveways, not providing a hospitable environment for cyclists and pedestrians, and also contributing to some of the safety issues in the corridor. And so I'm going to show a couple of potential improvements to this section of the corridor, starting with the one that is the least intensive. We sometimes have referred to this as more of a quick build type of improvement. It's lower cost, could be built relatively quickly, largely just reallocating some of the space between the existing curb to curb to provide a little bit more space for dedicated bike lanes. Showing that the outside travel lane could be converted to a bus lane, which would also accommodate right-turning vehicles along the corridor. Some of the advantages of this alternative is relatively low cost, quick to implement. Some of the disadvantages are it still provides narrow facilities for cyclists, not much improvements for cyclists and pedestrians along the corridor. We have, in some of our presentations, received some feedback that this is a less than ambitious alternative for the corridor. So now I'm going to go to the next slide, which shows on our scale one of the more ambitious alternatives for this section of the corridor. This would include actually widening out behind the back of sidewalks where we still do have right-of-way, but as I mentioned, there often has been intrusion in that right-of-way, either through commercial uses or through street trees and utilities. So it does result in a higher cost alternative with trade-offs, but it provides nice facilities. Some of the things that are shown in this option include a raised barrier curb to offer a vertical separation for additional buffer and protection for the bike lanes. We have the dedicated transit lanes to improve conditions for the transit service. And so lots of advantages, but again, lots of trade-offs with an alternative like this, and it's a higher cost alternative. So in terms of our project status right now, we are in the initial stage of implementation, the alternatives analysis, which we hope to complete by this summer. And as the part of the alternatives analysis, We seek to identify the preferred route for the BRT between the two alignment options that were presented, as well as to begin to define the complete street improvements that would complement the BRT service in the corridor. The subsequent stages of the project would then include going through an environmental review through the National Environmental Policy Act as well as CEQA for the project, and prepare preliminary design, and that would occur in the second half of 2026 and 2027. And that phase of the project is also already funded. The subsequent phases of the project then would be final design and construction, which would be subject to securing funding for those phases of the project. I'm going to turn it over to Jesse now to finish up the presentation.
So yeah, I would like to invite you all. We have our first public meeting next Wednesday on the 15th at the Oak Park Community Center. We're going to have a lot of boards, some like the examples in the presentation and some renderings to present. And we're just going to be soliciting a lot of feedback from the community on how they currently use the corridor and how they would like to use the corridor. So with that, I'm here to respond to any questions, and as well as Sac County and Sac RT staff are here as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Guerra.
First, I just want to thank everyone who's been working on this. This is another great example of where we have the city and the county and RT and an MOU working together. I think the more we do that, I think the more we can accomplish. I do want to thank my neighbor here, Supervisor Kennedy, for steadfast, every time on one side of the agency we're hearing something, we're pushing it also on the other side of the agency. So we're pushing this bus forward. So I'm excited about it, but I want to say this, that what I hope we don't end up with, and I've said this from the beginning, is where we end up with a 51 plus, okay? Not just another route that maybe increases the speed by a couple minutes. I want to make sure that we're thinking about this, not so much of how we've looked at transit systems from 30-year-old technology, but what does it look like for the future? And there's a California-based company that now it looks like they're going to pilot in Atlanta, and I'd like to make sure that we look at those the other types of bus rapid transit systems. I also worry about if we're really going to make a fast transit system and something that attracts people, if it's not one where it has its own separated loading and whatnot, then we're going to have the same challenges that we have right now in loading bus systems. And I think about that because I use the bus rapid transit system in Mexico City very often, and it was built out after all the roads and everything got built out. So and it also felt safer. That's the other piece here. So the system felt safer, so people used the bus rapid transit system more than they would the normal bus system because they felt like it was a safer and faster route. So I think those two things, I'd like to explore what Atlanta is looking at using smaller pods, because we're going to still have the same challenge in this bus rapid transit system where we have very large buses that are moving during low peak times at the same time. So maybe as we explore through this process, I'd like to make sure we're thinking about what does the future technology hold on this. So,
Director Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Guerra. 100% agree with everything that was just said. You have here punched in 3 of the 4 elected officials that represent this area. And I will say this, with all due respect to my city colleagues, we cannot do the green plastic separators and the pork chops in the middle of the, they're not working. And if we look at this as an opportunity where we're going to save a little money and do something that's going to be obsolete in 10 years because people have run them down and they're found in the middle of the intersections, and now I'm channeling Supervisor Cerna, who will tell you regularly that what was well intended attention, and we all voted for it as support. What we need here is something that's not 51 plus, but it's also not something that 10 years from now we're going to say, why did we spend the money? Why didn't we spend a little extra money to do it right? Things like raised curbs. If it costs a little more money, but it's going to last a generation or two more, then I think we need to seriously look at that. Thank you.
Director Maple.
I'm going to keep it brief and just say thank you, but especially thank you to Directors Guerra and Kennedy and Cerna, who have been carrying this on for much longer than I've been here, but especially to the staff. Thank you. You guys have cared. You've heard from the residents, and you've cared about these issues for many, many years, and it's really exciting to see this move forward. I certainly know that I hear about this just about every day from folks who live along the corridor and people who use it, which we know it's the busiest route currently in the city. And so I think we have a real responsibility to make sure that we're making it safer. And this is exciting to see. I also want to welcome everyone to the Oak Park Community Center, to the heart of District 5, to go to this. I'll look forward to being there. And just want to align myself as well with the comments that were made. I think it's the Contra Costa Transportation Agency that is currently also piloting doing autonomous buses and other transit. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to make sure that we're aligning with future technology as we vision out, because we know this all takes many years to come to fruition, as you all know better than I do. So the best that we can plan ahead for what's to come, I think the better. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment this evening? This afternoon? It's not evening yet.
We do not have any public comment.
Thank you. Director Rodriguez?
I just want to say that, I grew up in a big city where in San Francisco, where Muni is a big part of moving people around, and I grew up utilizing Muni to get around. And I've had my complaints about, we keep building communities and not incorporating transit, but transit is such an important part of getting people around. And so I'm really pleased to see these kinds of projects come about. But I got to say that I was recently in the city and I was really impressed with, on Van Ness, they now moved the light rail or the bus rapid transit portion to the middle instead of the outskirts. And I thought, that actually works out pretty good, because now you don't have the buses that are holding traffic up or having, when they make the multiple stops, it doesn't hold up cars behind or cars that are making right turns. And so I thought I was a little impressed with how that's the process now is on Van Ness, and it moves cars along quicker. So, but anyways, I'm just glad to see these kinds of projects come about.
Thank you all for coming today. Thank you also for including a rollerblader in that transportation. It's my favorite part of the whole presentation. I'm sure we're all inspired to go rollerblading later on this afternoon. And with that, we'll call the next item.
The 90s, baby.
Item number 8 is receive a presentation on the Sacramento Safe Streets and Affordable Transit Measure of 2026, a citizens initiative.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, board members. Steve Cohen is going to present from SAC Metropolitan Advocates for Rail and Transit on a citizens initiative in the city of Sacramento. I thought that this item would be important for the board to hear because it potentially would affect our efforts in a countywide measure in 2028 should this actually pass. And he can give you an update on where they're at as far as what this will fund as well as the status of that measure. That initiative, sorry.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you to the chair and the board for having me this afternoon. I was pleased to get a little education on VMT, which the nice thing about what I'm going to be talking about, it is VMT mitigation. So you're not going to need a bank to fund these projects. I am Steve Cohn. I am here as Citizen Cohn. And what I mean by that, I am co-chair along with Sam Rice of the Safer Sac Streets campaign. And we have actually qualified a measure to go out and get signatures And I'll talk a little bit about that in the city of Sacramento, the Sacramento Safe Streets and Affordable Transit Measure of 2026. So why now? Well, let's start with the headlines in our local newspaper. Sacramento is the second worst California city for car crashes, worse than LA. We actually had more collisions and crashes, not just per capita, but almost as many as LA in absolute numbers, which is just unbelievable, except we can believe it because we all live here and we see evidence of this on a daily basis. Another headline, Sacramento pushes a more urgent fix for dangerous road after 6 deaths. At Sacramento School, where a mom was killed, officials begged drivers to slow down. There are articles like this almost on a daily basis, and when they aren't being printed in the Bee, they probably could be, because this is happening all the time. We have one of the highest transportation fatality rates per capita among all California cities. Only Long Beach is ahead of us, if you want to call ahead on that dubious category. They at least have a Grand Prix. We don't get the benefit of a car race with all the negative aspects that we have. Also, City of Sacramento's pavement quality would be graded D- and near the bottom of the list for pavement funding compared to other cities in California. That's not even to speak of the rest of the country, where you often see much better paved roads, at least in urban areas. I'm talking about the city of Sacramento, but I think all of you know these same conditions apply to much of the county of Sacramento as well. Also, our public transportation infrastructure doesn't really match our evolving economy or the kind of prosperous future that we see for ourselves. And you look at the little box on the right, and it tells you part of the problem. LA, San Francisco, Portland, San Diego all have at least 3 times, and in some cases, like LA, almost 10 times the amount of money spent on transit that we do in Sacramento. And yet we wonder, why don't we have a great transit system? It's not because Henry Lee and his staff over there aren't doing their darndest to provide it. They are. They're doing a heck of a job. And in fact, they've been awarded nationally with how great they're doing with the resources they have. But they don't have a lot of resources. So what's the benefits of public transit? Improved health, reduced air pollution, lower traffic congestion, provide mobility for everyone, not just for those who own cars, and also helps the economy. If you think of the best cities you've traveled to across the country or abroad, I would be willing to guess that they all have better transit systems than we do here, and probably also much higher investment in that system. So what's the solution? Well, we would have liked to see, as you know, a countywide measure. And I was here along with a number of other people back in September, and we heard the polling. It's just not to be, the polling did not show the possibility of Sac County passing a measure, at least not now, and maybe not for the foreseeable future. Elk Grove, however, has passed a measure. Rancho Cordova has passed a measure. City of Sacramento has passed a measure for general fund, but not for transportation. So we think the solution, at least for the city of Sacramento right now, is to have a measure that would provide a half-cent sales tax generating $75 million a year, and the revenue would be split 50-50. 50% on roads, 50% on transit. Now, I say 50-50. There's actually 3% set aside for transit-oriented housing development, and then 1% for independent audits and oversight, very similar to what STA has for Measure A, but we would actually have an even stronger oversight because there would be performance audits, not just financial audits. You do have performance audits at STA, but not overseen by the independent audit committee or taxpayer committee. As a citizens initiative, it would only require 50% plus one, which we think is quite doable. Nothing's easy. I'm not predicting that this is any kind of automatic victory, but I do believe that as we go out, we're already out in the field collecting signatures. We're sensing people understand the problem. Now, of course, they also don't trust government, and they don't trust government to spend more taxes overall. But if you can convince people you have the right kind of accountability and it's being spent on the things they care about, particularly safety, then I do believe we have a good chance. And if we can do it in the city, I think that bodes well for other jurisdictions in our county and our region too, because we all know we need the funding. So just big picture, where would the money go? I mentioned 50% roads, 50% transit. Because the city is largely built, although we're trying to infill, and we do have some suburban development going on at Thomas and South Sacramento as well. But we would focus on street repair and maintenance. I mentioned how poor our pavement quality is, so we want to double the funding for pavement quality. Safety improvements, a lot of active transportation, and also things that will provide economic development and climate innovation potential. And on the transit side, improved frequency and affordability, state of good repair, safety, security, cleanliness, reliability. Also matching funds for the new rail that's coming up through Elk Grove into the city. We would provide, for the first time from Sacramento County, we'd be providing some matching funds so that we can be sure to get more and more of that kind of service coming our way. 3%, as I mentioned, for housing near rail or near transit centers. So how's the polling? Well, here, that's just a visual presentation of how the money would be spent. But the polling you saw back in September had a breakout for the city showing about 60% support. It goes up and down a little depending on what arguments you present pro and con. But that was compared to about 50% countywide. And that's, of course, why STA decided this is a no-go. But we think as a citizens measure, it is a go. And we believe we can get the 29,000 signatures that are needed to qualify. And the polling shows we have a fighting chance of winning that at the ballot. I mentioned 29,000. That's how many valid signatures. We'll want to get more than that to have some insurance coverage there. Those need to be submitted by mid-June. We have a lot of support. This is just showing you examples of nonprofits, community organizations, labor, elected leaders. Please pass on, where is he, Kevin? No, there you are. pass on our thanks to your mayor has shown real regional leadership, which we really appreciate. Of course, she's chair of regional transit, but also I remember her as a intern for Mayor Cerna back when I was on the city council. We appreciate, and I think Elk Grove has shown that you can gain trust from your constituents. And so we think that shows some real possibilities. And then, that's our website is www.safersackstreets.com. Feel free to visit anytime. And I think that's it. So I'll take questions if there are any.
Thanks for coming out today, Steve. Any questions?
All right.
Comments? Yeah.
Well, I just want to say that I do appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I think when you take it and you take a jurisdiction that has specific needs and you try to address those, I think that's a good thing. Where your emphasis is, I think transportation and roads are definitely a need. I believe that each jurisdiction should do its own. I had presented, a recommendation last year. It didn't go with my colleagues, but in the unincorporated parts of the county, we have a 39 PCI, which is really bad. And I think all of my colleagues that have parts of the unincorporated part, the second complaint we get is potholes, roads. So I thought it was a recommendation of a 10-year temporary tax. $0.25 would have given us about approximately $30 million that we would have been able to invest back into the roads, because at this point, I feel like there's no hope for getting our communities to have better roads unless we had some kind of another, like a special tax. And some of the feedback I was getting from the unincorporated parts were that if it was, if it was temporary, and the $0.25, and we had the, an oversight committee, I think, and people were assured that those $30 million would go directly to the unincorporated parts and roads only, nothing else but just roads. There was a lot of positive feedback on that. So, but I do commend you for moving forward with that and addressing the needs of this jurisdiction and letting the voters have the voice whether they want to do it or not. Right. I mean, we saw it happen in Elk Grove. We saw it happen in Rancho Cordova. And the reality is those two cities are thriving, and they're making huge investments into their communities. And it's really nice to see it from the outside, how the cities are thriving. So
yeah, I might add West Sac also did a $0.25 sales tax a while back. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you, Kip.
Any public comment on this item?
No public comment on this item.
All right. With that, we'll move to the executive director's report.
Wonderful. Given the time, I will do a very short summary of this. We're doing, the SACOG has a funding round, federal funding round, a 6-county round. SDA is providing training to staff to improve the competitiveness of their applications. Because it is a competitive process, we want to make sure that our agencies within Sacramento County are submitting as competitive projects as possible. So that training happened in March and will again happen in April. Another highlight I want to make sure everyone's very aware of is the I-5 Managed Lanes project from downtown Sacramento to the airport. We've gotten agreement on a preferred or a locally preferred alternative between SACOG, STA, and Caltrans. That project is going to move forward very quickly, which is going to usher in STA joining the Capital Area Regional Tolling Authority with probably an action item for board consideration in June. We also have an RFP out now for grant support that will likely come with that item as well, or at the same meeting. And with that, open any questions.
Any questions for Director Busey?
Any advice?
All right. Seeing none, I'll look to the subcommittee chairs. Any updates on our subcommittees? Director Guerra, any update from subcommittee?
No update. I wish we had better polling like we do in this one.
Director Hume, any update? All right. We're going to go ahead and adjourn at 3:07. Thank you all for being here today.